So probably one of the biggest problems with a person like me is I have got 2 million projects going all the time. And friends will ask, hey, Nate, you do this kind of stuff. Can you fix this for me? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can fix it. Well, I've had this dresser drawer now for, I'm going to say 6 months. It's probably been longer than that even. And I feel so bad for the friends of mine that gave me this task to fix this for them. This is an old dovetail dresser drawer, and it's had some issues, and it's a very beautiful old dresser. These are machined dovetails. You can see those were done with a router, but the wood shrinks as it goes, and it gets brittle and it cracks. So back here you'll see I got all of those dovetails done, and I'm working on these ones. Okay, now I could have used a radial arm saw to cut my length. Could have used the scroll saw to cut my dovetails. I could have used my Porter-Cable dovetail jig to cut the dovetails. Instead, I cut this with a handsaw, cut my shapes with a coping saw, and I'm sitting here with a number 2 Steinmer chisel and a pencil. This is expensive. You can get cheaper ones. This was $40. Coping saw, I think I paid like $12 for my coping saw. This is a real expensive $9 Klein pencil, and it is my favorite shop pencil. I have 2 of these. You can't buy my Porter-Cable jig for the tools I used to make this. And it's going to be just as good and just as nice and probably fit better, because when you use hand tools, it takes more time, and with time comes precision, accuracy. Oh, I take that back. I did use my marking compass here just to make sure I have my spacings correct. But, you don't have to have $1 million shop. You don't have to have $1,000 tools to do amazingly beautiful things. This coping saw, buy this at Lowe's for like $15. A pack of blades for $5. You can do just about anything with this coping saw you can do with a scroll saw. Not quite, but close. This is about the cheapest Craftsman cross-cut, cross-grain saw you're going to find. When I bought this, it wasn't even $10 at Lowe's. It was like $9.95 or something like that. That Stanley chisel set that I bought easily could do the work I'm doing. Granted, it'd take a buttload of sharpening to get them to cut like my Steinmans do, but you could be refurbing, building old furniture for $20, $40, maybe $50. I've got to cut a track in this today, and I could get out a router. I could get my shaper table out, find the right bit, right depth, get everything lined up and set, or I can use a narrow line chisel and knock it out probably as fast and just as accurate. This takes time. And again, I have got lots of tools. Some inherited, some purchased, some given. I don't know if I've ever really talked about it much, and it is probably my biggest thing I like to talk about in my wood shop. This was my granddad's house when I was a kid. We used to make all sorts of little knickknacks and trinkets in this shop. My grandfather sold this house when I was 7 or 8 years old to build his house, to build a new house, something better for elderly people. I was so mad. I always loved this house. Well, it only took me like 25 to 30 years and perfect timing with the people he had sold it to buy it back. But the same shop that I got my roots in for woodworking and carpentry and farming and working on these old antique guns and stuff started in this very shop. I can't grab a chisel or a coping saw or anything without thinking about sitting out here on a little shop stool cutting stuff out on my granddad's bandsaw when I was probably way too young to run a bandsaw anyway. But I just, that instantly pops in my head. And there is no $1 million shop or, $1 million worth of tools that could ever replace those memories. And that's if you didn't have a grandparent or a parent that had those types of skills, be the first one. Be that person to pass down that knowledge to somebody else. And I have probably forgot more of what my granddads had taught me about carpentry or mechanics or farming than I've ever remembered. But my kids come out in the shop, they get to work with Dad. My nephews come down, they get to work with their uncle. It doesn't stop with me. And that is an honest to God blessing. And we need to get back to that. The power tools help. They help get stuff built fast. But they don't always help get stuff built with warmth, with love, with, mindset. A lot of what I do, I don't sell for a very important reason to me is you can't put a price on the knowledge that flows in someone's head that has spent a lifetime working on these types of skills. You can't put a price on making something special. And like I said, that's a very important thing, and that's probably about as mushy as you'll ever really hear me get about this stuff. But me and Zach from Nesmix were talking about it yesterday at the monument, which I didn't post a video of that because I didn't get any, but they built a new Revolutionary War monument on the green in Wellsboro, and it is absolutely amazing. I'll probably post some pictures of it later, but when we were growing up as kids, internet existed, but it wasn't common. Computers existed, but they were expensive. We grew up in about the most northern region of Appalachia that you can find, and people that don't know history or geography will tell you that north central PA is not part of Appalachia. Well, they're wrong, and I won't argue with them. They're just wrong. And when we were growing up, you didn't have the access to knowledge like the kids have now. I can find more stuff on my phone than our public library had when I was growing up. So, knowledge was something you got from parents, grandparents, teachers. If you don't have those skill sets near you, there is somebody on your electronic device right now that's sharing that knowledge that you look for. And I don't know, like I see kids just mushing their brain away watching YouTube shorts of other kids eating Tide Pods. Like, why? If I would have had access to the stuff that kids have access to today, well, I'd have probably gotten a lot more trouble in reality. But, I'd be 20 years ahead of where I am right now. And I guess that's my big push, and that's the biggest reason why I started my channel. Grab some hand tools. Anybody can cut a straight line with a compound miter saw. Anybody can cut perfect dovetails with a dovetail jig and a router. Anybody can cut stuff out on a scroll saw. Not everybody has the ability and knowledge to use hand tools until they do it. And that is the difference in people. And that's what I want to do with my channel. I want people to realize that sometimes technology makes us dumber, makes us weaker. And getting back to some of those roots, some of those real simple hand tools. My tools are not pretty. You look, they've been dropped and beaten and pounded on and reshaped and recontoured, and some of them I've even reheat treated because I have worn the edges of them down past the temper. But just because it's old or obsolete does not mean it's useless. And I fear that there will be a day where old and obsolete is all we have left, And I, for one, don't want to be part of the group that lets all that history kind of fall apart. The gentleman that built the Revolutionary War Monument here in Wellsboro, I got to talk to a few of them yesterday. And, talking about family history. Like, my family line goes back to Thomas, and he fought in the Revolutionary War. He's actually buried up in Chemung, New York. My great-great-grandfather, Henry, built this house. He built this house for his daughter, and as time went down the line, his grandson, my grandfather, moved into this house, started his family here. And when he moved up to the main part of the farm, this house got sold. Well, I bought it back because it's a family house. And that's some of the history we need to keep, that lineage. But talking to them yesterday, a lot of people don't know who their great granddad was, or if they had family that fought in the Revolution, or if they had family that fought in the Civil War, or like my grandmother's family's direct descendants of the Mortons that signed the Constitution. It's just there is a pride in knowing your family history, and knowing your country history, and I'm going to show you a part of my dirty old broken door in my shop and show you just how how passionate I am about our history. Anyway, this right here sits on my door. All right, these are just copies. But they're all right here. you know. And I keep stuff like that up. I read books about historical figures for a reason. It is so that I don't forget where we came from or what we started from. You know, I hunt with compound bows. I still shoot a longbow. You know, I work on modern firearms. I still work on flintlocks as well. I still build flintlocks as well. Not because I have to, but because I want to. I want that knowledge. I want that ability to say, man, this is what our forefathers had. You know, I work with all of these hand tools with the utmost admiration and respect for those where that was all they had. And like I said, I hope people understand that about my channel, and my channel's not all, you know, mushed into one thing. I do a bunch of different stuff because that's what we were supposed to be as a people. You know, that whole jack of all trades, that's what America started on. That is what we came from. And and it's funny that, you know, now people don't work on their own plumbing. They don't work on their own electric. They don't work on their own heating, their own HVAC systems. People don't work on that stuff. You need a specialist to work on that stuff. No, you don't. You do if you don't understand it. You do if you don't practice with it. But we used to be self-efficient. We used to be self-reliant. And like this government shutdown stuff, and people joke about like the food stamp shortages, that's not funny. You know, when did we go from a strong, you know, self-reliant nation to a welfare state where kids, mothers, fathers, grandparents starve because they don't have the ability to fend for themselves? And it hurts. It hurts deep in my soul. It hurts. You know, we grow a lot of our own food. Do we buy food? Absolutely. We have to buy food. But we grow our own food. You know, my wife's father raises beef and pork. I couldn't even tell you what the cost of hamburger is right now. I'd probably throw up if I had to think about it. But that self-reliance, that ability to hold your head up and say, you know, I don't need you. I can do this on my own. That's a pretty awesome thing. And when you're voting for government, remember that the more government programs, the more government aid that comes out there, it ain't free. That comes out of people's pockets. You know, that property tax you pay for the property you rent from Uncle Sam, that goes to pay for that stuff. The sales tax on the stuff you buy helps pay for those SNAP benefits for other people. You know, all of that stuff, all of those taxes go for more government programs. Well, if the government shut down and they're not working, they're still taking your tax dollars. And that's the point. If we could get back to being self-sufficient, self-able, and self-reliable, we wouldn't have to pay all those taxes. You'd have more money in your pocket. You wouldn't need those SNAP benefits because they wouldn't be taking so much out of your paycheck to cover them for other people. You know, we don't need a big government. We don't need all the bells and whistles in life to be happy. We can have an old $70,000 house with a rickety old shop with a wood stove crackling in the corner and some chisels and make just about anything we need. Now, like I said, it's not supposed to be a grouch fest. It was supposed to be kind of sentimental. I hope you all have a great day. Shut these electronics off. Put the damn things away. Grab a chisel, grab a saw, grab a shovel, make some dirt, get dirty, build some strength. Love y'all.